Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we're doing another landscape tutorial. This one is of Bertha Lake in Waterton Lakes National Park. It's based off of a photo that I took last summer when I hiked up to the lake. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. All the materials used in this were from the dollar store. All the paints and the brushes and the canvas. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to have a lot of fun. I'll show you step by step how we go through this, and I'll show you in just a second here the brushes that I used and the paints that I used, so if you're interested you can go out and purchase the same ones as well. Okay, so to start off a nature painting, if you've ever painted with me before, you know that we like to start at the background, so the sky, and work our way to the foreground. And so today we're going to be painting from a photo that I took of Bertha Lake. Here's the photo. And so we're going to start with the sky that's up in the top here, and then work our way from the far mountains to the lake in the front. Alright, so we've got some sky blue, we got some white. We're going to take that up into the top here. We're going to start with the sky blue up in the top. Alright, so from here we're going to add in some clouds, make this little bottom part a little bit lighter towards the horizon line, and go from there. So we just need a little bit more white on the canvas. And I'm just going to continue to use this bigger brush here. So first we're going to make this horizon line a bit lighter, so I'm just going to take that white. And if you just put it in and then just give it some nice horizontal brush strokes, it will blend it in nicely with the blue that's already there. You can add some blue on top of it and work your way back down into it. Alright, now we're going to add just a couple of wispy clouds in there. So if you get quite a bit of white onto your brush, I'm just going to dab a little bit in here. And if you just kind of flick it around a little bit. I love painting clouds. Well, it's actually a love-hate relationship. Clouds can look so different each time you look at them. And so there's no real way to paint a perfect cloud. Every cloud you paint should be perfect. And we'll get a little one over here as well. If you want kind of the wispier looks on the end, if you just see how I'm flicking here, that's going to add that wisp look to the edge. It kind of flares out. And then for a little bit of distance, we're just going to add kind of a small cloud into the back here. Just like that. Get a little bit more white into this one. And a little bit more white up in here with this one. Alright, so there's some clouds. Now our next step is going to be to frame in the mountains. Alright, so one thing you may have noticed if you're looking at things really far away in nature is they seem a little bit less saturated, kind of foggy or misty, and so that means that our furthest mountain here is kind of going to be kind of a light, unsaturated color, and as we move forward they're going to get darker and more saturated and more detailed. And so mountains, during the daytime they can kind of have a purple, blue hue to them in the shadowy parts. In the base parts, that's going to be our base color, and then we're going to add highlights of grass and rocks and trees on top afterwards. But so we'll start with this furthest back one. It's going to be the lightest, and so I've got some blue, got some red that we're going to make some purple out of, and then with that, if you mix in a little bit of black or a little bit of white, then that's going to give us that faded out, not quite as saturated hue that we're looking for in the back. And if you notice your mixture ever getting like too red or too blue, just add some more of the other color that you're missing. Alright, so we're going to use that same brush we've been using to block these in. Here's our furthest back mountain. You know, and even adding that on just a little bit here, I feel like that's still just a hint too dark, so I'm going to add a little bit of white to that just to mute that and lighten that up a little bit. Alright, that's looking better. So the important thing is that when you're making the mountains that it overlaps a little bit with the sky. Otherwise you'll have a really weird transition area. So you want to paint over a little bit of what you've already painted. I'm going to take a little bit of white and a little bit of blue. And just kind of mix that in a few places. It just adds a little bit of texture to it. Because it is so far away, we don't really need a lot of detail. But just having a little bit of variation will help in there. So you can even dab in a little bit of, it's just a little bit darker. Just kind of dabbing that in. Alright, so moving into the next mountain, there's a little slice that's going to come down right in here, and it's actually more green than the back, than that purple is, but we're going to get to that. You can keep kind of that dark, the dark purple going in here, so we're going to bring that down right into here. And that's all that one is. Now we're going to move up to the larger mountain. And for the larger mountain, we're going to want it to be a lot darker. And so I'm going to add in mix some new purple, and add a little bit more black and brown to it to make it darker. Alright, so if you want to, you can wash off your brush, but you don't really need to, because we're working in the same color range. This is just a little bit darker. And so now this is going to be pretty much the rest of the mountain. So I've got a mark here where the lake is going to be in the shoreline, and so we're going to want to go pretty close to that, but I'm going to start up in this corner, just blocking this in. So remember again here to make sure you overlap the sky. And then another thing I like to do is I like to do my brush strokes on mountains flowing as if the mountain was going down to remind you of which way the mountain faces. And so this one's going left, top left to bottom right, And so just keep your brush strokes kind of going in that direction. This mountain, as you can see, is coming in from the top of the canvas. There's no sky above it, and so we're gonna have to paint in here exactly where it comes in and bring it down, and it's gonna overlap this other mountain here a little bit. Okay, and there's the background for the mountains. Now we're going to add in the highlights of the trees and the rocks, the grass throughout this. Alright, so for the highlights on the furthest mountain, I took some of that light purple that we were using and I mixed it in with a little bit of this light brown. It's called cashmere tan, just a light brown. So I'm going to take some of that on this brush. And it's kind of wide on the end. It's good for adding some texture, that's why I'm using it. So I have some of that, and we're just going to lightly dab some of that into here, into this back mountain. Alright, that's all we're doing for that back mountain for now. Moving into this piece is more tree covered. And at that distance it almost has kind of a turquoisey look. So I'm going to be using some turquoise and some pine green, similar to the sap green, and some white to give it more of a muted look. And I even added a little bit of black to it as well. Just dab that in. To change the color up a little bit if you want, you can I just added a little bit more pine green in here, just so it's not all the exact same color. And a little bit more black. Alright, so there's our highlights for middle piece. And now on to the main mountain. So the main mountain will be a little bit faded in the back here, but the more you get up to the front here, it's going to be very saturated. So I'm going to kind of start with that darker color I was using in the highlights here, and work that in a little bit in this mountain. Most of this, you can see my dots right here, most of this coming up into here is going to be covered by the trees at the shoreline, so I'm not going to worry too much about covering in here, more so this area up in here. The further you get up in here, the more shadowy it's going to be, because our light source, our sun, is up over here. And so it's kind of behind this mountain, which leaves a lot of this in the shadows. And so it's okay that our trees are kind of more of a greeny down here, but the further we go up, the more blue they're going to turn. So here I've just added a little bit of pine green to it, changing up that color on this bottom part here, because the further you get to the bottom, the more green the color will be. And the further you get to the front here, a little bit of this is actually going to be in the sunlight, and so it will be more of regular green in the very front. Alright, so there's our basic tree highlights. Now I want to add in some rock highlights before I continue with the trees, just to be able to compare the two. And so the rock in this And this view is kind of a purpley brownish, and so I've got some espresso similar to a burnt umber in color. I'm taking that, I'm mixing it with some of that purple that I had before, along with a little bit of white. And we're just going to dab that in here in between these trees. Alright, so I'm taking some of that light brown, mixing it into that mixture that I have, and dabbing that in there as well. Especially in these foreground parts. I'm going to rinse off my brush, and then we're going to touch up a little bit of the trees and work our way to the bottom of this mountain here. Alright, so the trees that are closer to the bottom here are closer to reaching this sunlight that's coming through here, and so they're going to be a little bit more detailed, a little bit lighter, which means I'm going to take some of that pine green, mix it in with a little bit of yellow. The reason I'm not mixing it with white to make it lighter is white just mutes it, but yellow keeps the saturation in, the vibrancy. Alright, so we're going to add some of that into here. I added just a little bit of blue to it as well, just so I can go a little bit further up the mountain. And this front part here is very, very green, very bright, so we're going to take that purple right out of there. We're going to add in this lighter green. Alright, and there's a thick pine tree part right in here, and since it is closer, it is going to be more saturated. So I'm taking some brown and some pine green to get that darker green that we're looking for. And I'm going to mix in a little bit of black. We're just going to dab in these pine trees, keeping the brush vertical. All the way up there. And then on top of that, some pine green. And on top of that, a little bit of pine green with yellow mixed in there. I just dab that in here, and I'm just going to dab in some yellow over top, just to kind of give it that look of maybe some wildflowers or maybe more yellowed grass. Alright, so from there we're going to add in the front trees and shoreline here a little bit, and then we're going to work our way into a reflection and come back and touch up that shoreline. So we're just going to block in this shoreline with a dark green, because we're going to have some trees a little bit more detailed than that in here, and and Shoreline. And so I still have some of that dark green mixed. I'm just going to use the same brush to block it in. I'll switch brushes in a minute. And so I have a mark here. This is where the shoreline's going to start, and it'll come about to there. The thing I love about painting nature is nature isn't perfect. Or you can think it is in its own way, I guess. But if your shoreline goes down a little bit further, that's okay. It's not a building that has been created and needs to have perfect dimensions. We're going to have some trees that come up a bit more, but we want those to be a bit more detailed. But this bottom part is totally going to end up getting covered, and so that's why we're just blocking that in. Alright, so we're going to be done with this brush for a little bit. We use it for some of the bushes and grass right up front, but for the trees we're going to use this one. I don't know, it's just more coarse. I can't remember what type of hair it is. It's very coarse. It's really good for adding in textures, and since it is thinner, then I will be able to use it for the individual pine trees moving up there. And so for those pine trees, we're going to use some of this dark color first, and then add some lighter highlights just like we did over there. Alright, so my tallest tree, going to be about here. As you know, pine trees at the top are quite thin, and then as they come down, they get a bit wider. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to continue to block in these taller pine trees, working our way down to where the shoreline is there. Alright, so once you've got the darkest background color in there, then going over it with the highlights is going to be what really gives it depth and texture. And so we're going to add in, just like we did over here, some pine green highlights on the left side. Make sure the lightest highlights on the left side, because as I said before, our light source is coming from this side. And so we'll add some pine green highlights in throughout the whole thing, and then I'm going to add some yellow to it. Add those highlights in again, mostly focusing on the left side of the trees, as that is where our sunlight, our light source, is coming from. Alright, so there's our basic highlights for the trees. I'm going to go back and touch this up in just a minute, but I want to fill in some of the grass in front. So taking kind of that medium, it's a little bit of pine green mixed with a little bit of yellow and a little bit of black, and we're just going to dab that in as the grass base in the bottom here. Now for the grass, I've just taken that same mixture, just without the black, yellow and some pine green. I'm just going to dab in that grass right in here. And at this lake, they have quite a few bushes right along the shoreline, and they're very, very, very yellow. So I'm taking quite a bit of yellow. It will be mixed in with a little bit of that green that's already on my brush, but that's okay. And we're just going to dab in those bushes all along here. And then underneath of them, we're kind of going to get a darker brown. Just dab in that darker brown right underneath of them along the shore here. And you might need to wait for a little bit of the paint in there to dry to add in the really bright yellow highlights. I'm taking a little bit of yellow mixed with a little bit of white. Alright, so for the lake, we are going to try to do more of a reflection, just doing the color of the sky, which would be like a blue reflection. We're going to bring in these trees down a bit, those trees, and kind of the mountainside. So if you've looked at a reflection, sometimes it can be almost perfect. A lot of times it has more of a blue turquoisey hue to it, and so that's what we're going to work in here. And so I've got some more blue, Pacific blue, and some more turquoise on my palette here. I'm ready to mix in to get those colors that we're looking for. And a lot of times it's just going to be less detailed than what you're doing up top. And remember, these paintings that we're doing here, they're not meant to be super high detail. They're meant to be something you can do in one sitting. We could spend a lot of time working in the fine details of the grass or of the mountains, but these are meant to be quick, fun little projects that you can do. And so we're going to come back to this brush that we were using, an angular brush. This one's pretty flared out, but that's okay. That's why I want it, because it's going to make it less detailed than what it was before. So I'm going to take pine green, and turquoise mixed together here, and a little bit of brown. And I'm actually just going to put this in as our base for this side here. I find it easier to get colors right once I've got a little bit of a base coat already in. And especially with these, if you're using dollar store paints, which I'm using here, a lot of times you need this base coat in, and then your second coat, the color saturation is a lot better, and then you also won't see through to the white of the canvas as we're seeing here. And then it is going to be the same kind of on this side with these trees, so I'm just going to add that same color into there as our base coat. For the rest of it, I'm adding some blue to that mixture, because the mountain behind is going to end up being quite a bit bluer and turquoisier than what was up front. I'm just going to add this base coat in here. Alright, so there's the background for the reflection. From there, now we're going to add in some more of the details, including some more of the yellow in there and the trees coming down on both sides. And then just make this color more of a solid color, both for the background mountains. Alright, so I've taken some more pine green, some of that lighter green, some black, and some turquoise. Mixed it in together, and we're just going to add in where these pine trees would be. Alright, so now I'm going to grab a little bit more pine green, a little bit more turquoise into there. And then just do that same kind of idea. And then close to the shoreline, that's where we're going to add in the reflection of the grass and the bushes. And so I have just a little bit of yellow mixed in with this mixture, making it a bit darker. I'm going to add that in here as if it was the reflection of those. Alright, we're going to do something similar over here with this grass coming down. It's going to be more of that light green. A bit of turquoise mixed in there. And then added some yellow to it, just like over here. For the pine trees behind, we're going to work similar to how we did down here. And then for the rest of the mountain, it is going to be more of a simpler reflection. It's not going to be quite so detailed like that. We are going to add in to that mixture that we have going on just some more blue and some more turquoise. And if it's too green, like I think it is right now, just added in some more blue to it. And this is just going to be a general reflection of the rest of the mountain. And here you're going to want to keep your brush strokes more horizontal, working your way through. And then as you come towards the side here, that's where we're going to get more of that light purple. I need some more white, so I'm just going to add some more white. I'm just going to rinse off my brush quickly. Just got some more of that light purple. Add that in here. Alright, the last step I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in a shoreline back here, similar to that. So I just have some brown and some black mixed in. I'm just going to use this brush. And if you want to, you can dab a little bit of green into that as well. And then just kind of blends it in. Alright, so at this point, if you want to, you can touch up any of the light highlights around in the back in the mountains. But here's just a simple mountain lake scene with a simpler reflection and simple mountains in the back and a blue sky. And yeah, take your time now to sign it up in one of these front corners, and you're good to go. So I hope you enjoyed painting this scene for me from Waterton Lakes National Park. If you liked it and followed the tutorial, I'd love to see your results in the comments below, or send me a message with a photo of your painting. Make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next tutorial, and I'll see you next time on Brand Sloan Artist.